Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the 1998, 1999, and 2000 Topps Gold Label cards in football, which is the entire run of Topps Gold Label in football. This is one of the most unusual card sets you're ever going to see from Topps because this was a card set Topps had to make because they had to make it. Topps has always loved to do the bare minimum. They do just enough to be able to get by, and they milk that for as long as they can. Now that doesn't mean that they are just inching their way along. They like to make big jumps and then have that jump really pay out over a long period of time. But in the 90s, that's tricky because everything was changing so quickly that even Topps was stuck after just a couple of years with something that just didn't work anymore, and they had to revamp it. They created a stadium club in 1991, and by 1993, that was old news. It really didn't hold up very well. In 1992, they created Topps Gold as their parallel set for Topps, but by mid-1994, they had to get away from that and do something more elaborate. In 1993, they created Topps Finest, and that held up quite well over the years, but they still needed to do more with it. And so they created they created Bowman's Best out of it, and they created Topps Chrome, and they tried to find other ways to invigorate the same technology. You spend the money at the front end, and then you just cash it in over the years. But as we got to the late 90s, Topps could not avoid the fact that you had to make special card sets for the sake of making special card sets. These were cards you didn't expect to be able to ride for long periods of time. It may be a one and done, maybe 2 years, but you go out, do something really amazing, get people excited, and then you go on to the next exciting new thing. Companies like Upper Deck and Playoff and Fleer, they were pretty good at doing all of this stuff, especially with Pinnacle. Well, Pinnacle was good at it and got carried away with it. But at any rate, that meant that there were innovations that were happening that were monumental, that weren't even enduring. And Topps had to figure out how to work with this. And in 1997, there were two card sets that were completely 100% unavoidable. They were Pinnacle Totally Certified and Fleer Showcase. These two card sets hit an interesting reset button in the hobby because they both did something, they did two different things that were unavoidable. In the case of Totally Certified, the cards in the set, the base cards in the set, were numbered out of less than 5,000. For context, not that many years earlier, in 1991, Don Russ had inserts where there were 10,000 copies of each one. We didn't know you could make so few cards and release them in packs. Now, the base card is less than half of that. And then they have the rare parallels. So this created a special tier of elite cards to collect that definitely shook up the hobby. I mean, less than 5,000 people can even collect any of these cards. That was a lot. Over in Fleer, they created new sets in Fleer and Ultra that did their own great job of hitting the reset button, where for Fleer, they had a whole bunch of different parallels going on. And more significantly, they had a parallel of those cards that was called Masterpiece that was one of one. There was only one of each card. And to give you an idea, there were, maybe 300 one-of-one cards total that were made across all the sets. Well, there were probably 3,000, 6,000, maybe 10,000 card shops. But even if we narrow it down to 3,000 card shops at that point in 1998 or 1997, that would still mean that 1 out of every 10 card shops could even consider seeing one of these one-of-one cards. It was a whole new idea of rare, elite, special, and Topps had to get on board because, I mean, even their Finest and Bowman's Best cards just couldn't hope to hold a candle to this. So they dusted off their design skills and said, okay, we got to make something that's just super special where when you look at you just go, that is the card. And that's what they created with Topps Gold Label. These cards are kind of a variation on Finest, but I would say they're more like a 1993 Fleer card than Finest. Like with Finest, they're a plasticky card, and they have they have an iridescent depth to it that's pretty fascinating. And all of these cards have a refractor finish on them, which is really interesting that they were starting off with a refractor. That was clearly something to make the card look like it was supposed to be super high quality even at the base level. But there does seem to be almost a 3D depth within the card that is really quite fascinating about these cards. But that's about all that there is to parallel with Finest. Other than that, the whole card surface is completely smooth. There is no relief except for the foil. But the foil and the images and the thickness of the card are all like 1993 Flair. It's about the same thickness. It's a similar rigidity. Flair had two images. It had a small image and then a big background image. Same here. Flair had gold foil text for the name and a gold foil logo. Same here. The back was a lot better with these Topps Gold Label cards, though, because it was clear they hired somebody who knew how to do design, because this card back is really quite impressive. But this is a card set that had no inserts. It was just the base cards and the parallels. And the whole design of this card was designed to be, even at the base level, a card set where you didn't care about parallels. These are full bleed images, but oh, the image selection is amazing, and it needs to be in order to work. Again, like Flair, they succeeded with that. They have gold foil on the card, but that gold foil is punched with relief, so it is kind of jewel-like, and it stands out. So it looks like the card has a refined care that was designed into it and manufactured into it. So these cards really did a great job of looking like the card. Now, they also have parallels, and the parallels are what really makes this whole release work. The first parallel is their Class 2. Well, okay, basically, they did a 3-tier setup where every one of the tiers is referred to as a class. So the main cards are just by default Class 1. Class 2 cards have a different image for the background image. And then they also changed the gold foil text for the player name. They changed that to silver foil, and there's a slight prism built into the foil. There is nothing on the back, though, to specify this is Class 2, so you got to read the foil. That's the only way that you can tell. But not with the gold label logo. The gold label logo is always gold foil. Then you have Class 3, and with Class 3, it's another image, and then down at the bottom, the foil is gold, but it's gold rainbow holofoil with a real fine detailing in it. The prismatic grid in it is really quite impressive. In photos, it tends to be easier to see the Class 3 than the silver Class 2, but in real life, Class 2 is a lot easier to see than Class 3, and it's easy to go through a stack of cards a number of times before you ever realize that one of those cards is a Class 3. You got to get the light just right to be able to see, because when you look at a really close-up shot of it, it's obvious, but when it's far away, and again, when the light's not just right, it can be very difficult to see Class 3. But again, Class 3 is easier to see when you're looking at a photo. Class 2 tends to be a little bit harder, which is kind of interesting, but that's what I've experienced over the years. But again, they don't specify Class 1, Class 2, or Class 3 on the back. You got to know. And there is a code that you could follow from the image, because each of the images in this series they choose, based upon the position, they choose a different type of image for each one of the classes. Starting with the quarterbacks, the Class 1 quarterback images are pictures of the quarterbacks throwing the ball. The Class 2 cards show the quarterback scrambling, and then Class 3 shows the quarterback handing off. So that's the way that the images are chosen. Obviously, you're not going to be memorizing the particular types of images, but it is kind of interesting to see that they do have this pretty reliably. Not completely. Some of the images are kind of tough. Running backs, however, are a lot easier, because in this case, Class 1 has the running backs running to their left or your right. Class 2 has them running to their right, your left. And then Class 3 has a tight portrait shot of the player, which kind of is the same case with quarterbacks, because in the case of quarterbacks, the handoff shots are all kind of tied in there anyway, so that works well. Now with wide receivers, it's a little trickier because I'm not entirely sure what the particular intent of the first two images are. As best I can tell, it appears that the first of the images is more of a receiving type of a shot, whereas the second one seems to be more of a route running. Not fully sure of which one, but 3 is once again tight portrait shots. The third skill position is the position known as defense. And for the defensive players, the first shot is an in-action shot. The second shot, or the class 2 I should say, is a pre-snap shot, and then the third one is again a tight close-up shot. So it's interesting to see how they actually have a pattern to the image selection within this card set. And you can look at these cards and you can say that they're all variations as well as parallels. Technically they are parallels because the class 2 cards only come at a rate of about 1 in every other pack, whereas the class 3 cards come at a rate of 1 every 4 packs. But the reason I say you could always also think of them as variations is that they also have parallels of these. Every single one of the 3 class cards also comes with a black label card. So instead of the gold foil logo, it has a black foil logo, which is kind of redundant because black doesn't really show up too well for foil. So what they did was for their onyx color, they have kind of a prismatic effect within it that helps to give kind of a glistening quality that makes it stand out a little bit more. Now, these cards do still stand out pretty well because they do not have the gold foil. So that's the one thing that saves these cards from just not working at all. But it is an interesting card, or an interesting look, because it's almost like it's missing, almost like a void. Really pretty cool. But the main parallel that's of note is their red label cards, where the gold foil is replaced with a gorgeous ruby red foil. The cards stand out a lot, but what's really notable about them is the fact that they're all serial numbered on the back with a ruby red foil print. So for the 3 classes, just like with Black Label, they are tiered. So class 1 is easiest, class 2 is not as easy, class 3 is hardest. And for the red label cards, all of the class 1 red label cards are serial numbered out of 100. Class 2 is numbered out of 50, and class 3 is numbered out of 25. And that is the set. Well, actually it's not the set, because a lot like what Fleer had done in 1997, they did make 1-of-1 cards for this set as well. I'm not going to get into that because I don't talk about 1-of-1 cards, and obviously I don't have any to talk about. So, but they did do that here with this set. So just in case they needed to really get to that high level, they took care of it. But that's the set. Every single player has 9 cards plus 1-of-1s, and yeah, that's the set. So that worked well. But in 1999, they were going to continue the same tradition, but they didn't have the same ability to get away with a really high-end card set, because it just there was nowhere to really go with it, and it wasn't such a smashing success to justify a really intricate level of care. So it was time to cash in on their goodwill. The 1999 card set is designed almost the exact same way as 98. The card design still has the gold foil logo, the gold foil text, has the 2 images. The back looks a little bit more like a normal card, but not entirely. And yeah, but you'll notice that the images are not as well cared for, and really the printing of the gold foil is not as well done either. This is a card that looks kind of blocky and has kind of a cheap quality to it. It's definitely, it's not an afterthought as much as they're not putting their heart into making these cards. They do have the same setup though. So every single card has class 1, class 2, and class 3, only in this case they actually do list class 1, class 2, and class 3 on the back, which is good. I'm glad they did that, even though it's more obvious here because class 2, the background is monochromatic. It's basically silver. And then for class 3, it is a gold color background. So that means that when you look at the front, it's almost always obvious which of the 3 classes it is. So it's funny, in 1998, we needed them to specify which class it was, and they didn't. In 1999, we did not need them to do it, and they did. At any rate, with their black label cards, it follows the same model, only in this case it does not say black label on the back. Because of the class 1, class 2, class 3 demarcation. But the red label cards, this is where it gets a little bit different, because it works the same way. But when you look at the number on the back, these do not have a foil print. Instead, the number is literally punched into the plastic, so that, and pretty aggressively. So it has not sharp edges like you're going to cut them, but sharp edges like you can feel them. So it's very difficult because of the plasticiness. Light doesn't really work on the surface very well, so it takes a bit to get the light to work to where you can actually read the number. But when you do, the number is almost like it's hidden, like a magic ink type of a surprise, where you can finally see the same numbers, numbered out of 100, numbered out of 50, numbered out of 25 for the 3 tiers, but really difficult to see these under normal circumstances. An interesting choice, but yeah, well, it's an interesting set. But they did actually do inserts in 1999. One set, 15 cards, and it's broken into 3 sections. So the first section of cards is dedicated to quarterbacks and then running backs and wide receivers. But the way that it works is they have a legend and then they have a player. And the legend is the theme of each group. So, for instance, with running backs, Walter Payton is the legend that represents this whole group. And then there are 5 cards that have different modern players who are carrying on his legacy. And specifically, the whole theme of this is that the 3 legendary players are actually the record holders for the main record for their position. And so the younger players are actually chasing after the records of these record holders. So that's the whole theme of this subset, or of this insert set. Payton is the only legendary player, or the only retired player, and he was still alive at the time that they developed this. So for running backs, the second group, he is the player who shows up on every card. For the first series, Dan Marino is the legendary player, and then you have 5 players like Peyton Manning who show up on the front of each of the cards. And then for the last group, Jerry Rice is on all 5 cards with 5 different younger wide receivers. Now these cards do have the regular base level. They don't have class 1, class 2, class 3, but they have the base level, they have the black label, and they have the red label. But the red label is interesting here because instead of doing 100 cards and 50 cards and 25 cards, they did it based upon the jersey number of the legendary player. So wide receivers, Jerry Rice is the legendary receiver, so that means that all 5 of those cards are serial numbered out of 80. For the running backs, Walter Payton's the legend, so all of the cards are serial numbered out of 34. And for quarterbacks, Dan Marino is the quarterback, so that means all of the cards are serial numbered out of 13. And I'd love to show you my Peyton Manning of this, but I don't have one, so I can't. But that was 1999. So the same model for the basic set, and then they added on an insert set. But it was already getting kind of long on the tooth. There wasn't really much of a reason to continue this same theme going into the 3rd year, but it's the 90s. That was it. Everything runs its course after about 2 years. So in the year 2000, they decided to reinvent the card set in order to sell more inserts. This was now going to become more of an affordable card set that is the kind of thing that you go and you try to put together for your collection, as opposed to being that super elite set that only the expensive collectors are able to collect. And the card, right from the outset, you can tell doesn't have the spirit of 1998 or even 1999. It still has the 2 images, but it has a big diagonal line design feature on the card with the cutout shot of the player in front of it, with the background shot peering out over the side. The card back has, it looks a little bit more like a normal card back. And you'll see that it's labeled as class 1. And then class 2 and class 3 are the same card with different backgrounds, but the same rarity. So instead of collecting more difficult sets, now all 3 of these are equally identical. So you're basically collecting 3 sets at the same time. There is, though, a class 4. And the class 4 card is a gold card where they have all 3 of the images that you saw in class 1, class 2, and class 3. And this card is serial numbered out of 1,000, with gold foil. But that was it. They didn't do the black label. They didn't do the red label. This was literally it. They were no longer trying to get the really high-end collectors. They were trying to churn through packs. And so that means that every single player has 4 cards. They have Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, and then the Class 4 is the challenging card, as challenging as this could possibly be, which, you know, still is pretty rare, but it's a very different type of card set. But again, that's because they were now thinking in terms of selling inserts. And they have a fair number of insert sets in this release. The first of which is Afterburner. So Afterburner is a card with just a hint of a background, and the rest of it is like flames. It has some gold foil. And that's about it. This is a card that is there to be collected, get it out of the way. That's kind of the spirit of it. The next insert set is Bullion, and Bullion is a lot better. First off, it's fancier, but second, it has 3 players on it because each one of the Bullion cards is looking at the 3 playmakers of a different team. So a couple of different teams, giving you more stars to be able to pursue and more people to collect individual cards. But again, it's a fancier card. This card looks more like it should be a part of a gold label. Then they have Graceful Greats, and this is a card that definitely fits into the gold label legacy. They have a silver background to really bring out the richness of the design, and they have a nice squiggly line at the bottom, that whole design feature. So these cards have they make a lot more sense. But now we move on to the holiday matchups, and now it gets to be interesting because they have 2 card sets that look at the matchups across either Thanksgiving weekend or Christmas weekend. And so each card has a die cut feature at the top, which is actually the exact same pattern for both of the cards, or both of the series. Each individual game of the upcoming Thanksgiving weekend shows up one player from one team, another player from the other, and then they do the same for the Christmas holiday with Christmas themed cards. But the thing about these cards isn't so much the matchups or even the front, it's the fact that when you look on the back, you'll notice that right down at the bottom, they have print of the player of a team name. And this is not even designed into the card. This is literally stamped on, but not stamped in. It's stamped on. It almost looks clerical in a way. But it's not telling you who is going to win. These aren't contest cards. It's not looking at the previous year. Instead, they're actually 2 cards. One of the cards features one of the team names, and then there's another card that features the other team name, which means that if you're collecting this set, you actually got to collect this set twice. One with the first team and the other with the second team. And that's for both the Thanksgiving as well as the Christmas set, which is an interesting quirk to these cards that I don't think a lot of people know about. But there was one other insert set that actually does look like it would fit in the 1998 packs, which is their autograph cards. And I mean, this is just exactly what you would expect a gold label autograph to look like. Again, you'd expect this from a 98 set, but here in 2000, this is a card that hits way above its weight. Really a nice card. But that was the end of the road for Topps Gold Label. Unfortunately, well, I guess I should say fortunately, because it was definitely, it had run out of steam. But the 1998 set is an amazing card set, and the 1999 card set is still really good and a lot of fun to collect, but this is one of those long-term projects to try to put together the card set. Long-term project. I've been working on this a long time myself, but it is so cool every time you're able to put another piece into it. So they would not do anything like this ever again. This was kind of the fanciest card that Topps ever made. And I don't know that I would say that I miss it, because they weren't good at doing cards like this. This was really more of an upper deck kind of a thing. And this was our opportunity to see it with Topps. So still pretty cool. But you can tell that by 2000, Topps fell back into being Topps. So this was all there was. But I do want to thank you for watching the video, for following along with this. If you have any questions, please let me know below. If there's anything I missed, which I think I got everything, please let me know in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Thank you very much for watching.